Hey, my beautiful listeners, we are back with season 3 of The Beautiful Side of Grief, and I'm your host, Helen Morris. My incredible guests continue to share their own personal stories of grief in so many different forms, and how they have managed to find the positives and beauty from their experiences. And I hope by listening to these honest, heartfelt accounts, you can find the tips, insights, resources, and strategies you need for where you are right here and now. And maybe one day even find your own beautiful side to your grief. So share away, as I would love this podcast to reach as many who need to hear it as possible. And don't forget to check out the episode notes as well for more information and links. Plus, the energy healing I do that changed my life forever. And this season, I'd love to share the affirmations and meditations I'm working on also, so stay tuned for those. Right now, though, my thanks to you for listening in, and let's check out who this week's guest is. Are you that person who doesn't know what to say when someone dies? Or have you had others do that to you during your own loss? Well, join the club of many, many others who are left in the dark facing this exact same thing. If you're like me, you are envious of that person who always knows the right thing to say or do in these awkward situations. The good thing is that I have the perfect person who's going to help us navigate this very tricky area of grief. Kim Hammer, whose husband died at 44 to cancer, found out firsthand how little leaders like herself are supported in the workplace when navigating cancer, a health crisis, or the death of a team member. So, combining her personal, professional, and leadership experience, Kim set about to change this by creating 100 Acts of Love, a business designed to support leaders and coworkers when a health crisis affects the team. I hear you say, but I'm not in business or a business leader. She's also written the perfect guide for us as well. 100 Acts of Love, a girlfriend's guide to loving your friend through cancer or loss. It's an easy-to-read book filled with 100 practical, quick, and effective ways to support a friend or coworker. So, as you can imagine, I am excited to chat to this HR leader and speaker who lives in Los Angeles, where she tries not to bother her relatively well-behaved college-age children. The intention I'm setting for this show is to get many helpful ideas and information on the do's and don'ts of supporting others so that we may all navigate this tricky area with confidence and much better equipped. And I'm sending all my love out to you today as you find your own way through whatever it is that you may be facing. So, welcome, Kim. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Oh, Helen, thank you for that introduction. That was great. And I always forget that last part about the kids because, I try not to bother them, but try is a very fluid word, I would say.
You're a mum, and mums can't help themselves. They have
really
to be that protective mama bear. So you lost your husband, and he was at such a young age. And so I would love to start by knowing, what is the most special memories you have of him?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. His parents had a house in Blue Hill, Maine. And when we would go visit with the kids, he would always get up a little bit early, and it was right on the water. And he would walk down the backyard, and they had this kind of sort of a patio, a deck. And on one side of the deck, you enter it from the backyard, but then it would go down to the steps into where the water was. But he would always love to sit on that deck. They had 2 Adirondack chairs there. He would bring his cup of coffee down, decaffeinated, and sit there before anyone got up. And I would sometimes wake up and wander down and, be there with him. So that's one of my favorite memories. And I think the other one is one that I actually wasn't part of, but it was one my husband loved to hike. We did a lot of hiking and camping as a family. And there's a fantastic photo of him in between his cancer entanglements with him and the three kids. Some stranger must have taken it. And they just all look so happy. And I know that he was happy because he loved hanging out with his children. So those are the two. I'm sure I'm going to get off this podcast and go, oh wait, there's that one and that one. But those are the two that come to mind right now.
Oh, those are beautiful. And there's something really special, isn't there, about sitting in the stillness of the day, either as it's starting or as
Yes.
it's ending. And I just think it's such a special time. I know often
Yes.
I'm getting up to go to work and it's dark outside, and I often just look up at the sky and look at the moon and the stars and just breathe it all in because it's so special and it's so quiet and it's so precious. And
Absolutely agree. Yes, yes, and
oh,
yes. And he was good because he discovered that and he pulled me into it. But I didn't always go willingly, but there were those moments that were just so precious.
yeah, yeah. And every time you look at that photo with your kids, that's magical.
Yeah,
That is
it really
magical.
is. Really, really
Okay.
is.
So, are you able to share with us now some of the background to your husband being diagnosed with cancer and then what that looked like for you? And in terms of needing to take time out for work and being his caregiver, if you were, and so on, because I think this is a situation that many, many people face unexpectedly. They're suddenly thrust into this arena they're not prepared for.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think there's an idea out there, and especially when the male, if it's a partnership with a male and female, that many people assume the female is just well equipped to take care of somebody, and it's not. I mean, it was an incredible learning curve of understanding the type of cancer he had, the drugs he was on, the side effects of the drugs, what to watch for, what to panic over, what not to panic over. When do you call the doctor? How do you talk to the children? How do you talk to your friends? How do you, it was it was like everything, in those movies where they have a moment where everything's suspended, like all the furniture comes off the floor, the books come off the floor, the person comes off the floor, they're suspended. That's what it felt like. And so I knew that we were going to drop. I just didn't know where we were going to drop and how everything was going to land when we dropped. So my husband was a very athletic. We live in Los Angeles. And so to give people a general idea, we were sort of like the typical LA couple, other than the fact that I'm not blonde and I don't have I don't have implants. But we were like this little happy couple and we had three kids and we would go hiking on the weekends and we ate, whole food. We ate food, organic food, yada, yada, yada. We worked out. We took turns in the weekends working out, but he was very athletic, and he was an ex-college athlete, and then he coached basketball for a long time. So being fit was part of his life, and he just wasn't feeling well. And we had just come back from a trip with my parents, with my mother and my stepfather, and he kept saying, like, I'm just having trouble breathing. And so I did what every good wife does. And that was, I gave him some of my asthma medicine. I was like, here, take this, try, maybe this will work. Right. And when that didn't work, we called our primary care doctor and she said, you need to go to an infectious disease doctor. And it was at that moment, something shifted with both of us because I have never requested to go to my husband's doctor appointments with him. And he has never requested me to go. And literally almost at the same time, I said, I want to go. And he said, I want you to come. And it was in that office. The doctor took x-rays. And it was in that office that we saw, like, there were just these spots all over his lungs. And that's why he couldn't breathe. And so on that day, they can't diagnose, they can't really tell you what kind of cancer it is just by looking at an x-ray. So the doctor said, look, this is serious enough that I want you to go see someone today. And it was Friday. And so he made an appointment for us. We went over to this other person. And from then on Monday, he was having so much trouble. We got an appointment with another doctor. He was having so much trouble breathing that this other doctor said, like, you need to be on oxygen right now. This is really serious. And you need to get this, there was a tumor in him. You need to get that tumor out and you need to start treatment like this weekend. And so he kind of lit a fire under us because we didn't really understand that was serious. We just kind of, you kind of think not us, like I'm going to tamp it down. It's not us. So that was sort of our journey. We jumped right into it. He was stage 4 immediately. And for those people who don't know, stage 4 is the worst stage it can be in. It means it's metastasized, which means it's all over his body. And my husband did exactly what I thought he would do. He just kind of hunkered down and he focused on getting better. And that was his job. And my job was to hold everything else together. At the time, we had 3 children who were 4, 7, and 9 at the time. We were one of those families that believed in being honest. So we told them about the cancer. And of course, we were expecting them to be very upset and cry. And they did start to cry, but then my oldest stopped crying and he looked at my husband and he said, but what's cancer? So, they were crying because our mood was like solemn and my husband was crying, but they had no idea what cancer was.
Such
7
a good
months
point
later.
that.
Yes. And I often say that I love to talk about this with parents because we forget we bring our baggage with us. And of course, as an adult, you know what cancer is and you know people that can die from cancer. Our kids didn't know that. Yeah. And I didn't even realize that they didn't know people could die from it until he was dying. And I told them he was dying. And then they were like, wait, people can die from this? So it was a unfortunate, a real life lesson in really understanding what kids know and don't know and what we as adults sometimes assume they know when they don't have that, they don't know at all. Yeah, so that was our journey. And during the time, we were very fortunate to have really strong communities around us. And we had lived in different parts of the country and we had people, supporting us from different parts of the country. And that was just beautiful. And what I realized then was that some people really seemed to know what to do and other people, didn't. And some friends stepped in, acquaintances stepped in, and some people we thought would step in didn't. And it was really kind of fascinating to watch. And then in 2009, he died, and I was very lucky to be there with him. I really feel like that was his last great gift to me, was to allow me to accompany him while he left, because it's something that I would have had to see him for myself. And I'm really grateful I did get to watch him die because he changed. And I needed to see that change. If I hadn't seen it, I would not have believed it, really. I just would have thought for the rest of my life, he's out there somewhere. Just doesn't want to be married to me, right? That's, it was his way of getting divorced.
Okay.
No, so I feel like that was a gift. And after he died, about a year after, I started to finally kind of come to terms with just that I used to be really angry and resentful of all the people who didn't step up and didn't, would talk about their lives in a way that felt like they weren't honoring the journey that I was on. But then I realized that I would have been that person. I wouldn't have known what to say. I didn't know what to say or what to do before my husband got sick. And I said the wrong thing all the time. And so coming to terms with that and really being honest about that allowed me to kind of just decompress and not be so resentful and angry. And then the idea for the book came because if I had been me, I would have wanted a guide. I would have wanted to open up a book and just say, what do I do? And the book says, take her car to the car wash. I've been like, great. Got it. Gonna go do that. Hi, I want to take your car to go for a car wash. Can I come by and get it on Saturday at 2? Okay, 2 doesn't work. Great. Can I come by at 4? Like I would have wanted to do something. And so that's how the book came to be, because there's a lot of information out there if you have cancer, or even if you're the one who's grieving, there's a lot more information. But for everybody else who's trying to support and help and wants to step in, there's like only 3 or 4 books. And so I wanted to be the person who could guide people on how to do that. And then the last part of that is why. And the why is I'm not here because I'm super strong or super courageous. Like, if you all think being courageous is getting out of bed and putting one pinky toe in front of the other, then we're all courageous, right? We all deserve that.
Yeah.
I'm here because of the hundreds of things that people did for myself, for my husband, and my children during this crisis. And every little thing was like an act of love. And every little thing helped myself and my kids and my husband, get through this horrible time in our lives. And I want people to know how important it is that they commit these little acts of love and how much they matter. They may not feel very significant to them, but they matter so much because cumulatively, even singularly, they every single time someone did something, it was like, I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I love your husband. I'm doing this because I love your kids. And that's really powerful.
Gosh, you've got me tingling here because, so much of what you're saying I can so relate to, but especially, we think it's the big things that really, really matter, but often it is those small gestures that make such a difference. Like I had a friend who would just always just say, "Hey, Hal, I'm coming to visit. I've got you a coffee and something to eat, and we can either hang out at yours or go for a drive." Or she just did that. And she would do that, every week to begin with. That was her
Yeah,
way of connecting for me. And what it would do is that often I couldn't think and I didn't know what I wanted and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I didn't even know if I felt like eating or not eating. And she just took
exactly.
that all away for me, made the decisions
Yes.
and took over. Oh my gosh. So, what was it when you got back to your work that made you realize that there was something, lacking in your workplace around how people, especially in leadership, could manage people who were in this situation like yours, either on that journey of, trying to cope with somebody very close to them with cancer or another life threatening disease or disorder, or somebody who had actually lost a loved one life.
So I didn't go back into HR for a couple years after my husband died. I was actually a freelance writer before then. And my very first job back into the HR field was I was working for an organization whose CEO's wife had cancer and ended up dying. And so and I was, it was really sweet. The head of the organization, so there was a US branch and a branch in London. And actually they're an international organization. The head of the organization flew out, attended the funeral, was there, but he didn't know what to do. And I watched, the first thing people wanted to do is bring food. And I was like, they're like, we're going to order and I said, no, 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 no. Everyone else is bringing food. It was just him and his son. And they're not going to be able to eat anything. Like most of the time people don't want to eat. And even if they do, they have too much food. So we're not bringing food. And then we did talk about what do you say? One of the biggest concerns was when he did return to work, which was very soon after, because I think some people expect, no, you need to take the time off. Well, sometimes when you lose a loved one, you need to be anchored. And sometimes anchoring is your job. That's where you want to be anchored. So don't be surprised if someone from who's lost a spouse a week ago wants to return to work. It's because they feel the need, their whole world has been turned upside down, and work is the one place that they know what to do and how to do it. So, what I did was I talked a lot to them about, hey, yeah, he's going to be short tempered. Like, that's just kind of what it is. Like, you see this person, but what you're seeing, he's not dealing with a full deck of cards. And those cards will start to come back slowly, but you don't know when and you don't know for how long. And so it's going to take a lot of patience. So there's a lot of coaching going on about having the patience for the person who has dealt with that loss for the person. The other thing is I had to be really frank with him and say, hey, you're not fully here. I know you feel like you're fully here, but you're not. And that the only reason I could say something like that is because I had been through it myself. So, I mean, I think that, if you're an HR leader and you want to tell the person who has just lost a spouse, they're not fully there, maybe step on that very, very carefully. But if you're an HR leader and you have dealt with loss yourself, you can talk to them about your experience, about how, how you look back. At the end of 1 month, you think, okay, I'm okay. And then you get to 3 months and you look back at what you were like at 1 month and you're like, oh, not okay. And then you get to 6 months and you look back at what you were like at 3 months and you're like, wow, you were not dealing with a full deck of cards. So I think, so that's sort of how it happened, was just really seeing in the first place. And I've watched, I've been in a couple different companies. I've been consulting. I'm consulting now. And I see it a lot where there's just this, if people on outside in their personal lives don't know what to say and do, organizations have absolutely no clue. Very few of them are really good at stepping in and having those courageous conversations with their employees who are dealing with loss.
A couple of things that, I particularly noted was when I lost my daughter, which was totally unexpectedly, I didn't know how much bereavement leave I was entitled to for a start.
Yeah.
That wasn't clear to me. So I didn't know, did I need to get my act together really, really quickly to go back to work? And as it turned out, I got this message saying, well, we've deferred the training that you were going to do for the general practices once, so we don't want to do that again. And so 3 weeks later, I was back on board trying to train, in these general practices. So I had to get my act together. But the thing I noticed about that was, my head felt like it had cotton wool in it. I couldn't think clearly. It took so much effort to focus, to concentrate, to be on my game, probably 3, 4, 5 times than normal. And it was exhausting. So I'd finish my day and all I'd want to do would be to go home and go to bed and sleep. And the other thing is that I couldn't handle noise around me. I didn't want the flurry of the office happening around me. It's like I just wanted to go. And so I was lucky. I had a very compassionate boss who said to me, Helen, just tell me what you need. And I said, I need not to be around people. I said, I know that sounds crazy and we're in an open plan office, but, and he said, well, how about we give you Wednesdays off? So you've got 2 days at work. We try and find you an office in those 2 days. You've got a day off to get yourself together again and we'll give you,
That is great.
And he did that very well. But often people don't know what they want. They don't even know how they're behaving. They don't know how to navigate what it is they're going through.
Exactly.
And so if you're in a workplace that is not providing any guidance, what do you recommend to people? What would you say would be that they take the lead and try and have an honest conversation about how they're doing or not doing?
I think there's a couple things. So first, if there's any HR leaders or managers out there, one of the first things you want to do is let the person know about their bereavement leave. And you want to do it in several different ways. You want to do it via text. You want to do it via an email. You want to do it via letter. And it's exactly because Helen, is exactly what you said. Our heads are full of cotton. We cannot take in information. And at least if we see it in 3 different places, it's going to hit someplace where we're going to be like, oh, okay. So make sure that you tell whoever it is what they have. Unfortunately, legally within the country, companies are only required to give you 3 days. With Sheryl Sandberg and her loss, MasterCard and Facebook now have 20-day bereavement leaves, and some other companies are following suit. But it's still not a common. People seem to think they're just going to goof off. I don't know what companies think, but a very generous bereavement leave, is 20 days. And that's the time. It's not enough time by any stretch of the imagination, but it's way better than 3 days. So I think that's the first thing is if you're one of those leaders, make sure that information is going out to that person. If you're that person, I highly recommend, we all needed significant people in our lives. If you have a friend who can bounce ideas off of you because you're not thinking straight, And when you go in to ask for something, it's going to be garbled. It's probably, you're going to go in and ask for something. You're going to walk out and be like, oh, wait, that's not what I need. And then you're going to feel bad. So make sure that you have someone to bounce ideas off of before you go in and ask. But yes, 100% go in and ask. And there's a lot of things you can ask for. You can ask for additional time off. A lot of times people in the office are going to want to donate their vacation time to you so that you don't get pinged, you're not losing your salary. So if you have a bank of time off that you can use it. You can also set up time to check in with your manager. This is something that this is what I coach managers to do, is to have those difficult conversations. Not difficult, they're uncomfortable. To have those uncomfortable conversations with the employee who's dealing with loss. And that uncomfortable conversation goes like this. I understand that you've, had a horrible loss, and I really want to make sure that you're okay. So here's, and that may be the first part. And the second part is, here's what I'd like to do for you. I'd like to give you X amount of time off, and we can figure out if you have the hours, you don't have the hours, we'll figure that out. And we need to talk really quickly. What needs to be downloaded to the team? What 4 or 5 things are on your plate right now that need to get downloaded? And to some people may think, oh my gosh, that's just too harsh. But the reality is you're in a business and your manager has to meet goals and KPIs. And the other reality is you're grieving. And to have that additional, as much as we'd like to think that, oh no, it'd be fine, I could leave work, there's always that additional thing that we feel really guilty about. And the last thing you need on your brain is to feel guilt, because whatever the death is, in my experience, and every single death I've talked to people about, there is a level of guilt about the death. There's a level of guilt about things that weren't said, things that didn't get done, things that there seems to be a small little bit of that, at least, and that's understating it. So if you're the person who's grieving, you've got to relieve yourself of that guilt of work, because you're already dealing with the guilt of the grief and of what wasn't said, what wasn't done, everything else like that. So your job to yourself, your favor to yourself, your gift to yourself while you're grieving is to unload 3 or 4 things, those big projects, and then let someone else take care of them. Right.
Yes.
So I think that's usually sort of my general advice, but it's really hard when you're in the middle of grief, especially immediate grief. If you're in the first 2 or 3 weeks of this process, to really understand and to stand up for yourself. So it is really okay to have a friend come with you, to have a coworker that you're close with who can advocate for you, to run it by somebody before you say it, because I promise you, you're not being completely clear, and you don't know what an option is. You don't know how many options you have. One thing I know about grief is it really, and I don't know, Helen, if you found this, it really narrows your focus. And I talk about grief and birth. So I remember, you always hear the stories about the wife who's yelling at the partner when they're not doing something right when they're middle of labor. And what I realize is when you're in the middle of labor, it takes your mental and physical strength. You have to focus on your whole body is like, yo, we need your attention right here and right now. So anything that distracts, which is if your spouse or your partner doesn't, wipes the brow and doesn't pat it or speaks too loudly on the phone, anything that distracts drives you crazy. Grief is exactly the same thing. It is a whole body, mind experience. And so when you said the loud noises, I was exactly the same way. I couldn't eat. I could only eat certain foods. Everything else, my body was like, nope, not dealing with it. And I got rid of it one way or the other. Yeah. And so it was amazing. It wasn't my control. It wasn't my trying to be, an underweight widow. It was, I couldn't manage flavorful food. I just couldn't. And so that's sort of what we go through. So anything, when you're grieving, especially in the early times, your mind is narrowly thinking because it takes over your whole body. And you're going to need other people to help you see what you can't see in the beginning. That being said, I want to add one caveat. If you are in 6 months of grief or 9 months of grief, just because you didn't ask for what you needed then, you can ask for what you need now. And I know that takes a little bit of courage, but 9 months, you're still grieving. You're still hurting. You may still need every Friday off or every other Friday off. And it is perfectly okay for you to request that. And for you managers out there, it's really a good idea to let that person do that. You can explain to the team about fairness, about what's happening. There's all sorts of ways we can message this so that the team understands and is very kind and loving and open to it, and that they know that they'll be taken care of if and when this thing happens to them too. So that's my last caveat. I talk a lot. I'm so sorry. I'm so passionate about this topic.
That is such good advice. You talk away, because honestly, this is exactly why we are connecting, because the information that you are sharing is so valuable on so many different levels. And I now want to talk to you about, is this the sort of information that you offer in the business that you've set up for companies, in that to support the managers that don't know what to say and how to manage somebody who's in the throes of grieving or going through, just really tough times? Because, talk to me about why you set your business up, how that came about,
Sure.
what it was that led you to
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it was really just kind of seeing how ill-equipped everybody was, and not from a negative point of view. It's just that they don't know. And, there's a lot of, when you look at employee engagement, employees love the companies they work for because it's like 70% because of the manager that they work for. And employees leave companies, usually 70% of employees leave companies because of the manager they work for, not because of the company direct. Those things are really important, the company direction, the values, everything else. But it is the managers who have the most influence. And unfortunately, managers aren't trained to handle these kind of uncomfortable conversations. Look, no one likes to talk about cancer or death or lupus or, car accidents or anything. We're not, we don't do a very good job of being able to have these open conversations. But it's so powerful for a manager because the manager gets to, I think most people think you're either empathetic or you get the job done. They don't think you can be both. And what I'm saying to managers is you can be both. You can be empathetic and productive. And those two do definitely work together. But it takes knowing how to have conversations, when to have conversations, who to have the conversations with. And so if it's with an employee who has, who's dealing with loss, it's okay to have the conversation with them of saying, hey, you're still grieving. And how do I know? Because your work is not what it was 6 months before this happened. And so let's have a conversation about setting up a type of plan and some kind of, some milestones so we can help you get back to the place that you were. It's going to be different. You're not going to be the same person, and we get that. But I also know that you have it in you. And I also know that this grief is really messing with you. So let's have a conversation to get you back to where you were, to help you work, through the grief and do the job that you want to really do. Because I think the other thing we forget is that as managers, we forget employees want to do good work. They want to be recognized for the work they do. They want to do good work that matters, that has a purpose. So that's sort of how it came to be. It was just kind of mixing. I mean, at every single HR job I've had, every single consulting, every single organization I've been in, I have seen a company kind of fumble when they're dealing with someone with cancer or with loss. Yeah. And I think the other thing is companies don't understand how important it is. They kind of say, oh, no, we got it. We're going to do the leave of absence. We got, FMLA. We're done. And that is just the tip. That's like the foundation of a huge iceberg. It's an opportunity for managers and for HR to really express, to help an organization, to help their employees deal with well-being, mental health, and supporting each other and community, which is really what companies are now having to do to make sure that they're having employees who are engaged in the work. So that's sort of how it came about. I'm super passionate about it. It's something that I feel so important, and it spills out everywhere. So it's not just for the manager. It helps the teams. It helps the employee who's dealing with this tragic thing that's happening in their lives. It helps the organization. So if businesses are really interested in improving their employee engagement and making sure that their productivity is high, you have to be able to handle these really difficult and uncomfortable situations in a way that is helpful and practical for everybody involved.
Yeah, it's bringing the heart and compassion into the policies, isn't it? Something you touched on when you said,
It
that
is.
6 month, 9 month time. So I know for me, like my whole entire life changed when I lost my daughter. It was just her and I, and nothing mattered as much. I was like the most
Yeah.
perfect employee. I was the person that everybody would want to have because I loved my work and I just loved, going that extra mile. But after I lost Tal, I did struggle with trying to keep up to where I thought I should be with my work and the
Yeah.
standard and level of work I was providing. And then I got to the stage where I thought, actually, I thought this was important to me. But this area of work I'm in, I thought it was important, but it's not important to me any longer. So at 9 months,
Yes.
I decided to leave. I decided to leave my career at a really crucial point. And
Right.
yeah, because I just thought, actually, my life has changed so much. I need to be moving in a different direction now. And so I had to have that difficult conversation. And it's recognizing that that is also going to happen down the line too. It's not just in those initial days, weeks, and months. It's also down the
Yes.
line that people, because grief doesn't ever go away, it just
No.
changes the shape of how it looks and how you're able to sit with it. So,
Exactly.
yes, I think that's important for people to recognize as well.
Yeah, and I think the thing too, if you haven't been through grief, the stereotype is that you're going to have someone who's weeping and crying in the office all day long for the next year. And you know, so for if you're out there and you have a grieving employee, that is so not the case. You may get an employee who comes back in several days after the death and is like stoic, like you have no idea. And you might get that employee who's going to be sitting in a meeting who's going to burst out crying and just have to leave the room. And you will probably get an employee who is a combination. So there are going to be days that they're going to be really stoic, and then there are going to be days where they're just going to not be able to be in the office. But what you will find is those days will decrease as time goes on because the pain of the grief decreases. However, as Helen, you and I were just talking, this happened to me the other day. My husband, when he would see sirens, I used to work as a paramedic. And so I hear sirens and I think, oh shoot, someone's in trouble and needs help. And my husband would hear sirens and think, go get them. This is great. Someone's coming to help. Like they're going to help this person. So he would see it as a very hopeful thing. Now, when he died, I would hear sirens. I really wouldn't think much about them. But 5 years after he died, all of a sudden, whenever I heard sirens, I would think, go get them. Like, go get them, guys. I would just have this cheery, peaceful thing in my heart. I kid you not. Last month, I'm driving. Ambulance comes up behind me. I pull over like I always do. I say, go get them. And I burst out crying. Just burst
Yeah.
out sobbing, right? It has been 13 years since my husband died. And in that one moment of all the times I say to the sirens, I live in Los Angeles. I hear sirens every single day. All those times I say, go get them. I have this beautiful, warm feeling in my heart. And this one time I said it, and I had this beautiful, warm feeling in my heart, and I burst out crying because I missed my husband. So that's what grief is like. It is unpredictable and it just shows up. So, if you can provide your employee, and I talk a lot about this, I talk about work plans. And I talk a lot about this when I talk about employees with cancer, because once the employee goes into treatment, depending on the type of treatment, what they can and cannot do often changes quite drastically, especially if it involves chemo. And the same thing, you can do the same thing with an employee who is lost, is that you can sit them down and say, okay, let's talk about what you can get done in the next 4 weeks. Right? And let's be really honest. You think you're going to show up at the office every single day and look, I've seen you. You're not all here, and that's okay. So let's talk about what you can get done. So you're still participating and still a member of the team. And then a month later, revisit it because they're going to be in a different place. And then a month later, revisit it because they're going to be in a different place. The biggest mistake I see managers make is they take the really good, powerful, meaningful projects off of somebody's plate as a way to give them time. And if you can't see me because I'm air quoting for anyone who's listening, to give them time to recover. And that is one of the most lethal things you can do for an employee dealing with loss or with cancer, and for the team, because the message you send to the team, even if the team doesn't know what's going on, they know something's going on. And the message you send to the team is, do not tell them that you are dealing with a hard time, because they're going to take your favorite projects away from you. Yes. And it's completely unmotivating. We get that you're trying to help, but it's not helpful. And it actually comes from a space of fear, the fear of not getting the project completed. And when we react from a space of fear, we often make a lot of assumptions that are incorrect. And one of those assumptions is, I'm helping this person deal with this because they can't focus right now. And that one project may be the one project that's keeping them sane right now. It may be the one thing that they can look forward to going into work and getting this one thing done, because the rest of their life is crap. So just keep that in mind as a manager.
I 100% agree with you, because it's so easy, to do that spray and wipe. Okay, let's make everything, nice and tidy and clean, and let's, just redivvy everybody's jobs and everything like that. However, exactly like you say, it's a passion that often what I find is that when people understand the situation that you're going through and offer to support you in ways that are really meaningful to you, you will bend over backwards to do what you need to do in return for them.
Exactly.
And yes. And so, that's how I read into what you're saying. Do not take away what they most love to do.
And Helen, I can't help but think, if the company had called you and said, hey, we've pushed back this training, we'd like not to, what's your, do you think you can do it? If not, if they had asked those questions and engaged, and also given you the space to kind of grieve, because, you were carrying this, I want to go back and be this employee that I was, and it was just impossible. And I can't help but wonder, if they had engaged you differently, would they not have lost you? Right? Because you don't know, we don't know, we'll never know. And that's also the thing of death, is that sometimes those, you kind of get a reality check of like, hey, that report that was supposed to be due on Friday and isn't going to be in on time, y'all need to calm down. Like, this is not life or death. Like, we're not in heart surgery. We're not rescuing astronauts stranded out in space. Like, yes, it's important, and our customers are really important, but we can, if it's late one day, it's going to be okay. And that person who's dealt with loss is going to come back to work with that kind of, I remember looking at my friends, being really upset with their husbands, or really mad at their kids, or, and I'm just thinking, you have a husband. Like, can we just put it into perspective here? Like, you may hate him right now, but last week you were talking about how great he is. So, as a manager, keep in mind that perspective, that employee may kind of come back into work with a kind of a very different attitude, which could be very refreshing and good for the team. If it's going to be annoying, for sure, but it's going to be reflective. It's going to maybe really good for the team.
Mm-hmm. I know that from my own personal experience, I think it was maybe a little bit earlier. And I remember, talking to this group of doctors, and they were very challenging of what I needed to educate them on. They felt quite strongly about it. And so they were sort of like, really relaying that strongly to me. And I could feel my eyes welling up, and I could feel myself about to cry. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not handling this very well. And in the end, I had to say to them, look, I appreciate what you're saying. Jane, and I know you feel strongly about this. However, I am feeling a bit vulnerable because I've just lost my daughter, and so I'm probably going to cry on you very shortly if we're not able to just move on in a way that I can actually deal with.
That's brilliant. I love that. And what happened?
And they actually all looked at me, took a deep breath, and realized, yes, actually, we need to give you some space. And they were incredibly respectful from that point on. And I
That
said,
is
I
great.
just need to do my job, which is to give you all this information. And I completely hear what you're saying, but now is not the
Yep.
time.
Yep. Yep.
I
Rafael
just
Helen.
think,
That's really, really powerful.
but it's hard to have that voice. Like I was able to do that, but so many people aren't able to do that. And
Yeah.
so they end up, either just running out of the room or bursting into tears and that makes them feel even worse that they weren't
Yeah.
able to manage their feelings, their emotions. And I'm always mindful that, I'm a little bit lippy at times, so I'm not afraid to
Right.
say what I think. But there are
Right.
many, many people out there who don't have that. So, on that
Yes.
subject, let's talk about 5 top things you shouldn't say to someone or you should say to someone. Let's go there. Let's give people
Okay.
some really good tools that they can use.
Okay. So I'm going to start with not to say because it leads into what to
Yes.
say.
Yes.
The number one thing, never to say to anyone who is dealing with loss, cancer, even divorce, a kid who just got kicked out of school, whatever it is. If you need anything, let me know. Now, I know I'm betting 100% of the audience has said it.
Yep.
And so here's what you can do. You can take that stick, hit yourself one more time with it, and then throw it away. Because it is something that I said so often all the time because I thought it was the most helpful thing to say. There are 3 reasons it's not helpful. The first thing is, what is anything? I mean, really, I had a toddler when my husband was first diagnosed. Were you willing to take your beautiful, brand new BMW, a white leather seated BMW, up to the school and pick up my vomiting toddler? Is that what you meant by anything? Or did you mean you'd be happy to run out and just grab some pasta for me because I just ran out? Did you mean you'd be able to drop my husband off at the cancer treatment center? Or did you mean you would sit with him and read to him, right? So what is anything? Anything is way too big.
Yep.
The second reason it's not helpful is because now you have put the pressure on the person who doesn't have a full deck of cards. I love that saying. Is under a great amount of pressure, is dealing with some life-changing event. You're not putting the pressure on them to take apart their life and to come up with something that you might be willing to do. And you can think about this in your regular life. When you're at work and someone says, "Hey, do you need any help?" And you kind of go, "No, I'm good right now." Or your friend offers to help you with something. Or sometimes you go, "Grab that box," because it's right in front of you. But that's as far as you can think because anything is just too big. So you're
Yeah.
asking this person who you care about, who you want to help, to take apart their life in these bite-sized chunks and then to hand one of those chunks to you. And the third reason it's not helpful, because even let's just say this person has figured out that one chunk and is willing to hand it to you. Now you're asking them to ask you to do something that you both know you may not want to do, right? Because in the moment, you are willing to pick up the throwing up toddler. In the moment, you're willing to do it. But then you walk away 5 minutes later and you're like, the sound of the feeling of vomit, the smell of vomit makes me want to vomit. No, I really don't want to do it. And so then if I call you and say, my toddler's sick, can you go pick him up? You go, there's that pause. There's that pause, which is the fear of everybody who asks anyone to do anything, right? That pause of, okay, I'll go do it. And nobody wants to know that they are putting they're burdening someone else. And in fact, it's the number one reason why most people don't ask for help, because they don't want to burden somebody else. They've told themselves a story that everyone's too busy. So those are the 3 reasons it's not helpful. What is really helpful is to be as specific as possible and to offer more than once. Now, my book is dedicated to a guy named Kinney, and Kinney works at the Venice Farmers Market here in Los Angeles. He also works at a couple others, but That's where I know Kinney from. And when I told Kinney my husband was sick, he said, if you need anything heavy moved, let me know. And honestly, y'all, when I first heard him say that, I thought that was the weirdest offer ever. But guess what stayed in my mind for over 4 years? He said he'd move something and then we had this grand piano. My husband had died and I wanted it moved. And who do you think I went to see? So be specific. You know, what you said earlier is like your friend came by with food and coffee. If you're going to offer food, offer 2 things and make them make a choice. But don't say, what do you want? Say, I'm going to bring chicken or lasagna. Which one do you want? I'm going to bring it on Thursday or Friday. Which day do you want? It's kind of like having an eye exam where they go, is this one better or is this one better, right? They have you do the thing for the clarity. So give them, if you're uncomfortable, give them options, but only 2 and very specific options. This takes bravery. This is where the courage comes in because we don't want to do anything that doesn't fit. We don't want to do anything that's not going to be helpful. We want to make sure what we do is really helpful. We may be under a time crunch and we don't want to be bringing them meals for the next 5 years. So there's all that things in your head. But the thing is, I want everyone to know so much. I am here because of the hundreds of things that people took control of and just did for me.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm going to share one story. I walk around this block in my neighborhood and one of my son's friends' fathers was out there and I was like, hey, how you doing? I hadn't seen him for a couple of years. And so we sat and talked and then I walked away and then I remembered what he did. And I have this on my Instagram post. So if you go to 100 Acts of Love, you can see it on my Instagram post. His name is Rob. And I threw a birthday party for my son who turned 8. So it was a year just after my husband, right before my husband's anniversary, he turned 8. And I threw this big party. I had no business throwing this big party, but I did it because I was like, you don't have a dad, so we're going to go big. And we had like 20 boys over at this house plus their parents. And there's all these gifts. And I was like, and he said to me, he comes up to me, pulls me aside and he says, hey, do you have any note cards? And I'm like, yeah, here. And I give them to him. He goes, do you have a piece of paper I can write on? And I'm like, sure, here. I give him a pad and a pen. And what he did when Ezra opened up all his gifts, he noted which boy gave him which gift. And then he sat down and he wrote that boy a thank you note. So at the end of the party, I had 20 thank you notes written already. Ezra didn't even need to sign them. And I knew every parent on there would understand and would be like, she did not need to do that. But it was one of those things. He took this huge, huge burden off of me because y'all, I wouldn't have done it. I really wouldn't have done it. And then I would have felt guilty because I didn't do it. And so he took this huge burden off of me just by he took control of the situation. And there are things that you can do just think about your life every single day. Like, you get up and you look at your cell phone. Is the cell phone bill paid? You go to the bathroom. Is there toilet paper? Is there soap to wash your hands? Shampoo to do the hair? Because what we forget is when there's death, the things that were ordinarily pretty easy to do become like climbing Mount Everest. Okay, so that's a long way of tip number 1. So things to say. I know that it feels really hard, but you can say, I'm so sorry. And it doesn't feel like it's enough. The saying will never be enough, but it is truly honoring and acknowledging what this person is going through. One of the things I have in my book is something that a rabbi said at a service for a 13-year-old girl who was hit by a car. And he said, you can just say, I'm so sorry. Your pain breaks my heart. You're not alone. And then follow that by showing up, by just calling. So I'm so sorry. Your pain breaks my heart. You're not alone. And I'm going to tear up. I love that because it's so like, your pain breaks my heart. It does. That's exactly how we feel, and you're not alone. Like I may be alone with the grief and loss of my husband, but I'm not alone. People are here and watching and want to help. And then show up with that cup of coffee and food like your friend did, drop flowers at the doorstep like my friends did, get that car washed, just, take notes in the meeting. You know that they're not really doing well. They're the person who sets the agenda. Set the agenda for the meeting for the next 4 weeks and just check in with them. Here's the agenda. What do you think? Okay, great. Got it. I got it. I'll send it out. Take notes for them in that meeting. Offer to sit with them in a meeting and take notes. So there's all these different ways. You can bring them a cup of coffee every morning. And if you can't afford it, because I know coffee gets expensive, bring them a cup of coffee once, or maybe bring in a coffee grinder so they can make their own. Bring in tea bags so you can bring them tea. You can ask them, do you want chamomile or green tea? Do you want ginger tea? Or, you can give them 4 options to choose from and let them choose, and then bring them a cup every day. And the small things really matter, because in the end, we just want to be witnessed. We want someone to say, I see you, and this is really painful, and it's crazy. It's crazy that happened to you, and it sucks. It really sucks. That's what we want when we're upset, when we talk to our friends. So that's number 2. Or number 1 is number one was the don't say. Number 2 was be specific. Number 3 was, the thing to say. Number 4 is make fun, have some fun. Just because their person died doesn't mean that they've lost their sense of humor. And I don't know if you found this, Helen, but I found that a lot of my friends were like, they wouldn't laugh in front of me. And I had one friend who would call me every Wednesday morning, and she would leave a joke on my answering machine. That's how long ago it was. and I would get the kids out the door, because people would come and pick the kids up, and I would listen to the recording. And sometimes it was the only time during the day I could hear myself laugh, and then I had a friend who came up to me. This is a death humor that you will get, but if you're not, you may think it's a little snide. A friend came up to me and she said 6 months or 7 months after my husband died, she said, I'm so sorry. I couldn't do anything. I was just going through my own thing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I said to her, it's okay. He's going to be dead for a while. So there's still time. You can have that, kind of humor. It's like, I'd complain about my husband, maybe not that one, but there's so many different ways that people joked with me about, I'd say, Kim, you better check with your husband. Right. You don't have one. And you obviously need to have that relationship with that person. It needs to be something where you were joking, you were humorous beforehand, so that it works. But, humor is so important. And in the beginning, like I said, it was so nice to laugh. It was just that one moment in the day in the beginning, but it was so nice to hear my voice laugh. So use humor, send her jokes, send her things, if she or he is not in the office, call them up and share some good gossip with them and just be like, you're never going to believe what happened. Now I'm in HR, so I do not I don't want, I'm always like, oh my God, the gossip rumor just gets out of control. But if you're not in HR, call them and make them laugh and tell them funny stories about the office. You can grab your cell phone and have everyone just say hi to everyone. So just say, everyone say hi to Helen, and then just, hi Helen, we love you, we miss you. And then send the video, right? It's
Beautiful.
so simple. It is so simple. You could have people say heartfelt things. You can hold a service at work. And this is more for the case where people where a coworker has died and people are feel not sure whether they should show up at the service. But you can have a service at work for the employee who died. Or you can get all your coworkers and be like, this team is showing up at this person's funeral, at this, if it's the husband's funeral, and we are carpooling and no one is not going, right? Double negative. You're all going. And I don't care how uncomfortable we are, because this is not about us. This is about our coworker. And this is about a team member who we love and honor and respect. And darn it, we are all going. So it can be something like that. Yep. And that's what I really want to point out is not one and done. I mean, I'm still moved by the person who sent me $10. She didn't know what to do. She found my address. She said, I don't know how to help. I can't afford to do anything for you, but I just wanted to say that I love you, and here's $10. Treat yourself to a coffee. I still don't know. It was anonymous. There was someone who sent me massage gift certificates, 3 or 4 of them. Don't know who it was to this day. And that's what I mean by those things stay in our hearts. And that's why, and they stay in the people who gave hearts. Like when I went back to Rob and reminded him, we saw each other at another event coming like a week later because I was dealing with the school that our kids were at. And he said, I totally forgot I did that. And he's like, that made me feel so good that you remembered. Right. And then I did that. He said, I didn't know what to do. And I just thought, here you are, this only parent, and you're going to have to write all these thank you notes. And I thought, I'm going to take care of that.
Yes.
And so he was so grateful that he took this action. Right. And so it's one of those things where when you don't take action, that lives on I firmly believe it lives on your soul. And a lot of times, if you're a person who's dealing with grief or loss, some people are showing up to make amends for how they didn't show up before. And let them.
Yeah.
They may not have shown up for their dad or their sister or their friend or their friend's parents the way they wanted to. So they're going to show up now. So instead of being like, hey, wait a minute, I don't really know you. Why are you here? Just let them help. Don't give them the numbers to your bank account. Don't give them your credit card information. But if they want to drop off a meal to your house, and they say, hey, I'm going to drop it off on Saturday at 6. Do you want lasagna or chicken? Let them do it. Let them help you. Let yourself be loved, because people are saying thank you to you. You don't have to pay them back. The law of reciprocity is actually in reverse. They are saying thank you to you, or they're saying thank you to the person who has died. So, they're saying thank you to the husband of the wife who's at the workforce because she talked about him all the time and they heard great stories. So they're saying thank you for being a part of her life and for helping us have better days because your wife told us really funny stories about you. Right? So I'm so off topic now. So I think we're at 3. 4 is don't say at least. Don't do the comparison game. It's not your job. It's not your place. A lot of us do it because we want them to feel better. Your job is not to make someone feel better. Your job is to witness their pain. So don't say at least. At least it's not this. At least it's not that. At least, at least you got to be with your husband when he died. Those type of things. I get to say at least. I'm the one who gets to use it and say, well, comparatively, my husband was 44. So at least I got to spend some time with him. I was married to him for 14 years, right? At least I did get to be with him when he died. That was very important to me. I get to say those things, but you do not get to say at least to the person who's dealing with grief. I had someone come up to me after my husband died a couple of weeks after the service. Kim, at least you're young and you can get married again.
Oh my gosh.
Well, now I feel so much better. I don't know why I need to grieve because I can get married again.
Oh no.
I mean, yeah. And I've heard people come up to people who have 2 kids who've lost one. At least you have another child. So the word, if your sentence begins with at least, it's a reflection on how uncomfortable you are with the situation. So keep your mouth shut, go get comfortable and come back and at least say, listen to me, at least say, and you can say, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And that is a great thing to say, but do not, and that, I guess my 5th tip is don't ignore it. Don't not say, don't pretend to not say anything. That is the worst insult you can give to somebody.
Yes.
Because what you're saying is what you're going through doesn't matter. And I'm so uncomfortable with what you're going through that I can't even work through it. So you're not acknowledging what they're going through. And also you're acknowledging, honestly, I'm going to be kind of cruel here. You're honestly acknowledging that you're a coward. Like, you know what? This is not about you. Their loss is not about you. And so the least you can do is say, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. I'm so sorry this is part of your life journey. You don't have to say anything ever again, but to acknowledge what they're going through, because you're going to want to be acknowledged when you go through something. We all, that's what Facebook and Instagram are all about, and TikTok, and,
Yeah, you're right. And I remember people doing that to me, especially in the supermarket, just totally doing a U-turn when they saw me and heading in another direction because they didn't want to see me because they didn't know what to say. And that was quite hurtful, And the other thing I found when people didn't know what to say, and I knew they were so, so upset. And I could see, I just say, just hug me, just hug. The hug says it all.
That's
I'm
so sweet.
feeling you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think there's, I want to take back that coward statement. I'm sorry. That was a little cruel. I think what it is we undervalue how valuable we are.
Yeah.
And one of the best things that people said to me was, I don't know what to say. And I remember my friend came up to me and she just said, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. We just sat there crying, So I think that's it's okay. That's a great thing to say. It's just walk up to someone and just like, I just don't know what to say.
Yeah, I know.
Because your situation with your daughter takes away someone's breath.
Yeah. And it makes other parents think about her friends' parents. They've got children the same age. It could have been any one of their children.
Yes.
So
yes.
I get that it's a double-edged sword. Yes. They're grateful it wasn't their child, but they're heartbroken it was my child. And
yes, exactly. Yeah, my friends were like, it could be my husband, but I'm really glad it's yours, and that puts people in a really hard, guilt-ridden position. Yeah. So if that's you, it's okay. I think the thing that we judge our feelings. And so when we judge them as bad, then we run into this kind of situation where we judge them as bad and we feel like, oh my God, I shouldn't say that. We feel guilty and we feel like we're not nice people, but death and everything else causes us to have multiple different feelings from opposite ends of the spectrum, and so it's not easy. So please forgive me on the coward comment. I was just kind of going off there. That was not fair.
It's okay.
Not fair.
And I believe it's all relative to people's life experience as well.
Yes.
Yes, everybody's at different levels of awareness where they're at. And some people have never had grief in their life to be able to even know how to navigate it. And other people have had so much grief, you think, how are you still standing?
Exactly. Exactly. And so I think that's the thing too. No one missed a class. I think that one thing I found when people were really helpful to us is I was like, did I miss a class? Like, did I miss that one day in high school where they taught you what to say and what to do?
Yes.
And lo and behold, most of the people who were able to step up had been dealing with some type of grief or loss in their own lives. Yes. And so they just kind of knew, or they had a good friend who dealt with this. And so their friend told them what to do. And then there were the very few gifted, very few incredibly empathetic individuals who were like, you know what? If I were her, this is what I would want. I'm going to take a risk and just do it for her. And if she likes it, great. If she doesn't, then I'll find something else. And so that's what I mean, that it does take a level of courage. You have to be willing to put yourself out there to be able to help. And I remember all those people who got it wrong, but tried, And so that's very different than the ones who got it wrong and didn't really seem bothered by the fact that they got it wrong. There were those who got it wrong. It was like, oh shoot, okay, I'm going to try again. And so that's equally as touching and as moving and as understanding as getting it right the first time.
I'm going to share it with you really quickly, something that really just touched my heart not so long ago. So I went back to Hawke's Bay where I was living and working at the time of Tyle's accident. And so I went back into my old workplace and caught up with my old boss, and it was beautiful. It blew me away. Everybody in that team, and probably 2/3 of that team, didn't know who I was. Oh, you're the Helen that did this or did that, or, they talked about me and they all knew who I was. And I just hugged him and I just thanked him. I said, you don't know what a difference you made to my life. And I'm always going to be grateful for having you in my corner at that time. And he was going, oh, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, like brushing it off.
No,
And I
exactly.
just said,
Exactly.
no, it
Exactly.
meant so
Yeah.
much to me. But I walked out of there with the biggest smile on my face and my heart filled up.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
that was just beautiful.
Yeah. And so let's bring it back to the team. So I think that's really important. Team members, it's hard because you're crossing that, COVID allowed us to cross that personal work line much easier now, but it's still hard because this is a coworker. You don't know their husband, their parent, their child that died, personally, or maybe you do, but the point is just cross that line.
Yeah.
Cross that line because it means so much to them. And you don't have to have all the answers. I often advise managers to just have the initial meeting of, whoa, what the heck just happened here?
Yeah.
And then the person's going to be like, I know. And there's going to probably be tears and anger or whatever, but just have that initial meeting and then let them know, hey, look, let's check in a couple of days. If you need to take the time off, take the time off. Let's check in a couple of days to talk. The other thing I highly recommend is if the person, this is such an HR thing, but not all companies have that, make sure that the emergency contact is updated because your work probably wasn't really keen on calling you. And they were probably like, I don't want to call to get the information about the service and everything else.
Yes.
That's where that emergency contact number comes in. And if you don't have one or if it's out of date, call the person and say, hey, look, I'm sorry this is happening. I need your attention for 1 second. Please give me the name and phone number of someone who I can call, who we can ask you about how we can support you. And don't take no for an answer. Be like, no. I just need the name and phone number of one person. Just give me the name and phone number of one person. You get them off the phone and then you're in contact with that other person about how you and your organization can support them. Because obviously you don't want to be dealing with them when they're in the middle of, especially in the early stages of that, of that grief.
Yes.
Want to find out when the service is from other people.
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. This, so much to navigate.
Yep.
What is one big lesson you would want everyone listening to this to know? Or a piece of advice. It doesn't have to be a lesson, but piece of advice that you want.
The lesson is that you matter. It's something that I end all my stuff with is that, oh my God, I'm going to cry. And I hate as a woman, women, we always announce that we're going to cry. Like, oh my God, I'm going to cry. Like, I really want to stop announcing it. I said this in the podcast, but I am not here because I was super strong or because I decided I was going to live for my kids or any of that. I am here because every single time people said that they loved us, did something that signified that they loved us, it just gave me the courage to get up one more day.
Yes.
So when my neighbor came up and asked when the oil was changed in the car, and I started to cry because it was my husband's job and I couldn't even tell him if it needed to be changed. And then the next day I came out and he had changed the oil. He had washed the car and filled it with gas.
Yeah.
Like that story still gives me hope and still makes me think, okay, another day is possible. And so those $10, that little $10 gift that woman sent, the massage gift certificates, the joke on my answering machine, all those things made a huge difference in my life at a time where I was really questioning my ability to get out of bed every morning.
You said something, sorry for interrupting, but you said something, and I really just want to touch on this. Don't say no. Our initial response to people when they offer to do something for us is to say no. Oh, no, I'm okay.
Yes.
No. Please recognize that these people want to do something for you. They want to help you. They don't know how to help you. They just want to do something.
Exactly.
So just allow them to do whatever it is they're suggesting, if, of course.
Yes.
It's safe.
Exactly. Because you are lovable. And I think that we, in our heads, we keep track of everything that we've done wrong and we forget about everything that we've done right. And I think the other thing too is oftentimes we say no because we think we're going to have to pay them back. And I mentioned this really quickly, but the law of reciprocity, is basically if I give you a quarter, you feel like you need to give me a quarter back at some point in time down the line, if not 50 cents, right? And so here's the thing, when people are asking or offering to help, you're on the other end of that law of reciprocity. You have done something for them that they want to pay you back for. or you're on the other end of law of reciprocity for somebody else that you have never met. But it is an incredible opportunity to feel loved, and it's an incredible opportunity to give people permission to accept help as well. And I can't tell you how many friends of mine have called over the years after they've watched me go through what I went through and said, Kim, you set a really good example. I saw how people helped you, and I realized I just needed to say yes. I needed to say yes to the help. So although your loss is 100% about you, allowing people to help you is about you, your friends, and the community at large. It's a gift. Yes. It is a really big gift. So that's the thing I want people to know, no matter what side they're on, whether you're on the side of trying to be the person who is supporting and loving up that person who's going through a hard time, or whether you are trying to be, or you're the person who needs that love and support, just say yes. Just say yes, because you matter. You matter so much, and people want to love you, and you are lovable. So that's the one single message that I want everyone to take away from this.
That's why I do this. That is so, so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Talk about tear me up. Oh my goodness. Oh. So we have just talked up a storm here, and I know that we've got past our hour, but I just want to finish up with a couple of quick fire questions. What's the best thing that's happened to you today?
I realize I made a mistake, and I'm not scared of the fact that I made a mistake.
Great. Love that. What is your proudest moment to date?
This is going to make me cry. Again, it was 3 weeks before my husband died. And I saw how much he was suffering. He was, this athlete. He went from crutches to being a walker. He was having trouble navigating even 2 steps up and down into this den. And so I sat him down and I said, it's okay for you to go. I see how hard you're struggling, and you don't have to do it. You don't have to live for us. We're going to miss you, but we'll be okay. And then 3 weeks later, he died. And so it was something that was really hard to do, but I'm really glad I did it, because I really wanted him to go in peace and not to go worrying and fretting and thinking that he did something wrong, and that, we were all going to just crumble and lose ourselves with him. So that was definitely my proudest moment in my whole entire life.
Can you stop making me cry, please? Oh my gosh.
You stop making me cry, we'll be good.
Okay. And when your day turns to custard, when there's moments that are not going so well, what's your go-to?
You know what, Kim? You got this. So it's
great.
It is literally my talking to myself in third person. And then sometimes it's usually laughing, like, you got this. I don't know how. I don't know what you're going to do, but you got this. So it's like a little kind of pep talk to myself. And it's usually with a lot of laughter, because it's clear that everything is out of control and I have no idea what I'm doing. And so
I love that. You're human.
Exactly.
Oh, Kim, I am so, so grateful on so many levels that, your 100 acts of love, you're doing it for workplaces, you're doing it for people like me and the community, so that people have a go-to when they are struggling, when they don't know how to support somebody or help somebody. And this is just a treasure trove of information. So we're going to have the links to how they can get in contact with you in the episode notes, but let's just share that for anybody who's listening who wants to know that right here and now. How can they get a hold of you?
So first of all, if you want to download 5 phrases never to say to anyone dealing with cancer or loss or anything, go to 100actsoflove.com, and that's the number 100. And then you're going to go / what not to say. Very simple. What not to say, no capitalized, no spaces, and you'll get that free download. You can reach me on Instagram and LinkedIn. That's where I hang out the most. I am also on Facebook, so please feel free to stop by. And if you have a question, I do LinkedIn Lives every Thursday. So if you have a question it doesn't have to be about business. If you have a question about what to say, what to do, or how to ask for help, or how to get the help you need, please leave me a message on LinkedIn, and I will answer that question in one of my LinkedIn Lives, of course, anonymously. So yeah, I love what I do. I'm always so grateful to be able to be of service to people. And so if you do really, I'm really serious. If you have a question, message me on LinkedIn and I will be sure to respond and also make sure that everyone else hears it, because you're not the only person with that question.
I knew this was going to be
And
an
that's it.
episode filled with just so much treasure and wealth of information and goodness. And like I said to you, as soon as I saw 100 acts of love, that melted my heart. And that just showed me that you are a person after my own heart with what you're doing. You do it with so much love, with so much energy and so much compassion. Kim, thank you so very, very much for being with me today.
Oh, Helen, thank you for what you do, because yes, indeed, there is a beautiful side of grief. It's just amazing. So, and you and I, what you're doing in your story and us together we represent that beautiful side. So I'm so grateful that I'm to be here. Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Yes, and I'm so grateful that you are here. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.